Hello.
It's Eleanor here.
Trevor here.
And we are from Topocata, an animation studio based in Hertford, UK. And we specialise in our own style of animation, which is using paper puppetry and motion capture.
And this podcast is for all you creative types out there, maybe working out of a small studio, who would be interested in tips and tricks and knowing a little bit more about what other small studios are up to.
And how we do stuff.
And how we do stuff.
Oh no, that's it. A big impact with small media.
That's good. Like it.
We're going to write that somewhere on the podcast.
And we've got to say happy birthday to Eleanor.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so it's her birthday. We won't go into age and stuff like that.
No need.
No one needs to know. It's just a number. Anyway, what are we discussing today, Eleanor?
Well, this is episode 15, and it is called Voiceovers, Commissioning and Directing.
Yes, rather than doing your own voiceover.
Yes.
Which is, I mean, if you want to sound professional, don't do your own voiceover.
Yeah.
Unless you're a professional voiceover artist, of course.
Well, of course, yes. It does make a big difference to the impression of what your project is to the general public. So if it's going out to the general public, you know, the most professional job is the better one.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, obviously, voice artists have been professionally trained. So I've heard people before on projects say, oh, I know someone he's good at doing voices. And so, well, there's proper training, voice work that goes into being a proper voiceover artist that makes it sound fantastic. Mm-hmm. And they go through a lot of training to do that. And it shows. So if you want a professional sounding product, then you get a professional.
And you also, just getting it recorded in a professional way as well.
Yes, absolutely. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about finding the voiceover artist, commissioning them, and finding a studio, and then also talk about some of the directing skills that you can acquire when you're directing voiceover.
Yes, yeah.
So first off, finding the voice. So
this is we're talking in respect to our own experience when we got a voiceover artist for our project Gaudo's Gift, the Movie, which is a digital web book.
Yes, animated. Interactive. Sound effects.
Personalised.
It's amazing.
There's all sorts.
Check
it's amazing.
It out. Yes.
Anyway, to get back to what we're meant to be talking about. Yes, so we wanted to get a voiceover artist for that in particular. And also we wanted a kind of name attached. Therefore, we went for an actor.
Yes.
So obviously you're paying more for the voice and the actor's name.
Yes. We got the wonderful Brian Murphy, he's a bit of a 70s sitcom hero, comedy hero, isn't he?
Yes,
George and Mildred. So he's done numerous things since then, and bit parts on modern comedy shows. So he maybe is known to a certain generation, but we also loved his voice.
It's that sort of deep resonance and sort of
warmth. There's a certain warmth.
Yeah, there's a lot in the voice that we thought this is a character we want to portray.
Yeah, it's lucky because so you can go to voiceover artists. Obviously, they can work as individuals, but we approached an agency because it meant that we could trawl through a number of different voices and see how they would apply to the character that we wanted them to play.
Yes. So on most of the websites for agencies, there's little clips of each of the actors, and sort of generally they usually got 2 or 3 different clips, and one's more commercials.
Yes. One's
maybe for sort of narrative and fiction work. So you can get a feel for the kind of characterization they can do, and that kind of.
Yeah, because we very much wanted a character voice. Almost cartoony, not fully cartoony, because you do have to think about the style of voice that you want, and it has to fit with the character and the style of the work that you're dealing with. So in our case, because it was for a children's book and the character is quite exuberant, so we wanted a voice, someone who could do character voices, basically.
And he also takes on different characters in the story, doesn't he?
That's true. And so we did hear a demo where he did do a number of different voices. So we knew that he had the range to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So you did the negotiation with the agency, didn't you?
So, yeah, you contact the agency. We did actually we did sort of narrow it down to a few people, didn't we, at the agency? And obviously the cost is a big thing. Mm-hmm. And one of our choices was a better known or more well-known individual. And the cost attached to it's just half a day's work, basically.
Yes.
It was over 20 grand. It was a lot of money.
Yeah, we backed off from that.
We backed off from that, and he's now a sir, so it's obviously was a well-known person. So you have to kind of balance this stuff with what you can afford. But Brian was a really good choice for us. Such a wonderful voice.
Yeah, so one of the things to consider, I suppose, is how it's going to be used, because the agency gets very interested in what the usage is going to be.
Yeah, that's the main thing, actually, the usage. So we have, because it's on the internet only, we have sort of exclusive rights for that. But had it been for broadcast, that would be another cost again, or a different costing system.
Absolutely.
So you have to really pinpoint what you're going to be using it for and make sure you do cover everything that you do want it for.
Yes, and they do try and suss out who you are as well. So if you were a bigger company, a bigger agency or advertising agency, whatever, they would factor that into the pricing as well. So for individuals, you might find that it's not quite as expensive as you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And the next step then is obviously to find a place to record. Or is that the next step? I suppose actually what we did as a step in between was to find a voice director. Because we knew we were going to book it to a studio.
Yeah.
We wanted someone that would, because we'd never done voice directing before. We'd never directed anyone to do a voiceover.
And it was enough money that we wanted it to be right. Absolutely right. So we did look into finding someone to be there with us to direct the voice, and that was well worth it, actually.
It definitely was. So that's the next step, because you can brief them about what you want, and they may even help when it comes to the next step, which is booking the studio.
Yeah, and I think that there was some recommendations, actually.
Yes.
The first one we tried, though...
The first studio?
The first studio, yeah. They were fantastic, but they did point out to us that they were on a 5th floor or something.
Something like that.
And they didn't have a lift.
Yes.
And...
Brian Murphy at that time was about 85 years old.
Yeah, so they pointed out that he might be a bit breathy.
So we didn't want the start of our narration to start with this sort of out of breath, unless we needed an out of breath character.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good choice. So that was very good of them to point that out, because that's something we hadn't considered.
But the place we did go to was fantastic as well, wasn't it?
Yes. That was ID Audio. And they're near, it's in Kensal Rise, or it's North London. Basically.
Yes, yeah. Queen's Park, yes.
And they were very good, very reasonably priced. It's less than £100 per hour.
Yes, and it included the engineer as well.
Yeah.
So they were there to put any markers on the audio, or, just check it.
Absolutely
worked.
what they're doing, don't they, in terms of levels and stuff like that, as they should do. Yeah, so consideration is also, getting the artist to the studio. Yeah,
so we booked a taxi to pick him up and take him back.
Yeah. How did that work out, Emma?
That was pretty good.
He was late, wasn't he?
Oh, he was late, yeah. Well, this is the other thing, timing. So we paid for
3 hours.
a morning's work, and the studio cost is a minimal cost, really, when you're sort of
factor
dealing with
everything
it.
in, yeah.
So what you should do is have as long as you can for that money.
It was crazy. I mean, I was guilty of that. We quibbled about how long we should book, because we were thinking, well, the book itself, you could read it in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then maybe with all the extra bits, and then that's sort of half an hour.
No.
So you're thinking, well, you don't need more than a couple of hours to record 30 minutes.
And I thought 4 hours. So we
yes.
went for 3 hours.
We went for 3 and we ran out of time.
Yeah, he was late. And
He was
obviously
late.
he
Yes,
can't
there was
work
that.
continuously. There needs to be breaks.
Yes.
And you sort of explaining the project and what you need and what you want.
And various run-throughs as well.
Run-throughs and, yeah. We thought we'd want to do sort of definitions and little sort of quips that we might use on social media and stuff like that.
Yeah, we did get him to record some extra bits, didn't we?
Yeah.
Outside of the story. So that's always useful to think about doing that. But yeah, as you say, we wanted him to read some of the definitions. We didn't have time for that.
There's 250 definitions.
Yeah,
I don't think that would ever worked, to be honest. But anyway, as much time as you can, you should use, or at least book for.
Yes, yes, exactly. If you've got someone for the morning, book the whole morning.
Yeah.
It was kind of crazy looking back at it because the studio cost was a minimal cost, really, in the grand scheme of things.
We got a good thing anyway, but yeah, that's definitely something next time round we'd be on that.
And as well as briefing, because we briefed the director, so briefing basically is to take them through the text and say what you want from various parts of the text. More emphasis here, or this bit, we really want this comic effect from this few lines.
This is leading into this idea, and
exactly. So the director absolutely knows how to direct. They know what you're looking for. So they had control over the magic button that they pressed to give voice direction to the voice artist.
Yeah.
So they could brief the artist as well. We did send a text to Brian, didn't we? Send him the copy.
Yes, we did.
Not sure that he read it before he arrived.
I'm not so sure either, but
you send it anyway, because some artists would like the absolute to prepare, and others like to just sort of dive in.
Yeah. So at this point, he's in the cubicle as well, isn't he? So to point out that he's in the cubicle with the glass, so you can see each other, but the only person who can sort of verbally interact is the person with the button, which is what you just referred to.
Yeah. It always makes me think of Toast of London, which is this British series about an actor and the way that he gets treated.
Yes.
This is another reason maybe we thought voice direction, getting a voice director, because there's a real art to that, to directing someone. You really don't want to tell them how to say stuff. They've trained.
Yeah, you don't
need
want
to be able
annoying.
to tell them what emphasis you want out of things. What are you trying to get out of this particular verse or whatever it is, and allow them to come up with their way of creating that, because they bring their own character to it.
Yeah.
If you try and engineer it and tell them precisely how to say something,
you're not going to get the best.
You're not going to get the best
out of them, because also they've got their own ideas, they've got their own flow, they've got their own sort of characterization, they've got so much more to bring to the project.
Yes.
Than their voice.
Yes.
So you should actually make the most of that as well.
Yeah.
But to just sort of be able to say this is the joke or this leads into that joke. There was a few points which we thought we might have missed.
Yes, but yeah, exactly. So all those things you have to sort of point out at the beginning. So yeah, a good example of not overly micromanaging the direction. I saw an interview with Gary Oldman where he talked about working with Christopher Nolan, the director of the Dark Knight Batman films. And he said he got a fantastic bit of direction. Christopher Nolan actually didn't give many notes, but when he did, they were spot on. And one of them, in a particular scene that he was doing, Christopher Nolan approached him and his direction was, there's more at stake. So he kind of gave him the emphasis of what he wanted.
Yeah, but then it was down to him to work out what that character would do. Would they draw into themselves more, or would they be more exuberant, or whatever? But
yes.
that's the direction he got, he knew how to handle.
There's another thing we learned off the voice director, which was, he had this phrase, it was just one more for luck.
Oh, yeah.
Which was great because sometimes you'll get the voice actor say something and you go, that's pretty good. Like, is there anything to improve on that? But the just one more for luck, they might do it slightly differently. There's an edge to it. And that allows you then later down the line to have an option when you're editing.
Yeah. And also, if you've got a few and you don't think you've got it yet, but you're on the edge of everyone getting kind of irritated, just one more for luck, that's kind of like, oh yeah, okay then. It was rather than and again, and again,
exactly,
and again.
Because I kind of liked it because it was kind of optimistic. It wasn't saying that they'd done it wrong.
Yeah.
It was just, let's try another one.
Yeah.
Just, and very often they'll try it slightly differently, and it gives you those options.
We are also working with other voice artists, or have done since.
Yes,
and it is a different setup. They have their own home studio, and we can direct through Zoom or whatever.
Yes.
But you're at the mercy of the tech, which is another good reason for going to a studio.
Yes.
They're in charge. They're doing it. You've got an engineer there sorting out any problems.
Yes.
Obviously, home studios are a fantastic thing, and it means you've got access to a lot of voice artists.
Yes.
That you wouldn't otherwise have. But you have to bear all those things in mind.
Yes, it's true.
So since we have done more voiceover work, and it's fantastic actually to see them working.
Yeah, and the more open you can do, like we've had voice artists who've almost made us reconsider the characters. And that's brilliant.
Yeah, has
because
changed.
they brought something to it and we've gone, well, okay, let's go in that direction.
Yeah.
And that makes it all the better.
For everyone, actually, because they feel a lot more involved. They are a lot more involved, and it's more of a collaboration.
Yes.
That's a really good point.
So at the end of it all, I think when we did the professional studio job, I think there was an option to have various markers put into the metadata on the file, but we just had them deliver the whole thing as one big lump that we could cut up ourselves.
In a WAV file.
Yeah. So it was a lot to go through, and there was a lot of editing work on some of the sentences and stuff like that. There's always going to be things that you feel like you wanted to go back and correct, but I think there's a lot that you can actually do in the audio editing.
Yeah.
So, and we used Reaper. I think we've talked about Reaper before.
I think
we used Reaper. It was brilliant.
We were going to, did we mention about Galdo's gift? And I think, Yeah,
well, he had one thing that sort of, it's right at the beginning, wasn't it, when he came in, when he first pronounced Galdo's gift, it had a bit of a Galdo's gift or something at the end, and our hearts sank slightly. But actually, I think, because that didn't come across when we were listening to the demo tapes, did it?
No.
But that added a certain frogginess.
It did.
I really liked it.
We were kind of, it might sound a bit rude, we were kind of wondering if his teeth weren't quite stuck in.
Yeah, maybe, but
it was, it did lend itself to the character.
It did. I think we were a bit lucky there.
Frog King Galdo.
Yeah. So there is a certain element of rolling with it. Don't have too many preconceptions going into the studio, because, like we say, the artist brings something unique to it.
Yeah.
So do you think that's?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a good
roundup. I mean, there's so much to talk
stop.
about the subject, but I think as a good overview, maybe we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you very much for listening. Do leave comments if you've got any questions, or if you've got any of your own experiences with voiceovers.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to hear, actually. Definitely.
Leave that in the comments either on YouTube, or I'll put a link to our blog where you can add comments there.
Yeah, okay. And please do tell anyone else that you think might enjoy listening to the podcast. Send them a link.
Yes.
You could sign up to our newsletter as well.
Oh, I'll put a link to that, definitely.
Yeah, fantastic.
And maybe I'll put a link to Galdo's gift, so people can actually hear what the performance sounded like.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yes. All right, then.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.